program is also being streamed as we speak at RabbitHoleCenrl.tv. So this is a simulcast. It's also a very honored occasion for me. These friends are gathered for a birthday celebration here on January 22nd, 2008. And so I'm very happy to have here at the Rabbit Hole Central headquarters here at BBS Radio, Phil Gruber, Desiree Hertog, Dr. J.J. Hertog, Jody Sirota, Zachary Fader, Sharon Newmark, Jade Netanya, and Paula Gloria. And we are going to be speaking about the state of the world as we know it, the future. We're going to be sharing prayers, hopes. We are going to actively help lift the vibration of the planet. So the coming year will be an easier time for all those listening and wanting to contribute their energies also to the uplifting of the planet. So I'd like to start, though, maybe with Dr. Hertog, who has been a visionary for the last 30 years in trying to really feed a higher vibration to the coming change that we're involved in. We're in the midst of a great awakening, and there are many people resisting that shift in consciousness because there's a certain comfort and stability in holding on to the old. And people like Dr. Hertog, who's written a very great book called The Keys of Enoch, is about a reawakening of a new energy that's coming to the planet. And particularly 2008, he's seen a great vision. So Dr. Hertog, would you mind sharing?
We live in a very fascinating time where we see various energy currents coming together. Here in the United States, we see here at the end of the month of January in 2008, scenario abstracts, flashes of hopelessness, so to speak, of economic change coming very rapidly. We know from the position papers coming from Bali, Indonesia, and more recently in September of 2007 at the United Nations, forecast of great climate change that speak of, shall we say, the removal of renewable resources within the next 30 to 50 years that will affect the lives of millions of people. And we see also the acceleration of conflict worldwide, particularly in the Middle East, that suggest that there is no turning point to great problems of religious philosophy, cultural rivalry, ethnic imbalance. From Sudan and Kenya all the way through the Middle East, we see situations that harken back to the ancient tribal cultures of warfare and destruction. And yet, at the same time, we see the glimmerings of something that is magnificent. And having recently spoken in Curitiba, Brazil, with leading astronomers, scientists involved with the study of life beyond planet Earth, it behooves me to speak to the worldwide audience of what I believe to be the most important chapter of the human race that awaits us, the most important story of the last 2,000 years, the recognition of independent civilizations in outer space that are reaching out to us as a planetary humanity through a variety of paraphysical signals and manifestations that we are being heard, and we will be in some degree coached and helped in the coming changes that will reach out to us from all sides. I would like Desiree, my beloved wife and colleague, to continue.
Also, I think you might need electricity over there.
Oh, no, it's okay. We're still streaming. I'm talking to Desiree. I also want to say, people listening on BBS Radio, you can catch a live stream of this radio program, watch the visuals at RabbitHoleCenrl.tv. This is a simulcast experiment and transformation for the coming planet. Desiree, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, many of you are familiar with the Hopi prophecy that said, stop hanging on to the shore and go with the flow of the river. And I think that this is what we're experiencing right now. And I think we talked about, even in a previous program, where we were listening to a special radio station in California, and people were talking about the environment, and they said, oh, what does it matter if something's 2 degrees warmer? You know, for Californians, it's just a better
Right, what
day.
does that matter?
Well, I think this is what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the fact that it's affecting everything going on the planet. And when you have crises in terms of environment, one of the biggest problems right now is, of course, electricity going into the area of Palestine. And as much as we'd like to say that all these things, you know, really don't relate, we feel they do relate. But that means what's going on the planet.
Wait, did Israel cut the electricity going
I don't think they really cut the electricity. I think that there's just not enough going on with what they need. There's a lot of politics, which we, as you know, don't really get involved with. But what I'm saying is that it reaches on every level. That there's an economic problem because of the price of oil. There's a problem because of the changes of climate. You know, people have been freezing in certain areas like Atlanta or even Iraq.
Right, there was a snowstorm
in Iraq, exactly. And so, you know, all these things just build up. So what are we going to do? I mean, this is the main thing.
What are we going to do?
Do we panic? I think people, in a sense, have been panicking. And I think that's exactly what not to do. We have to discover our higher spiritual selves and go with the flow. And this is what I think our message has to be right now, even as a whole spiritual group, that we realize changes are taking place, be spiritually centered, and go with the flow of these changes.
Aaron, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I actually, I wanted to engage Professor Hertek specifically because like for about a year or so, I had been coming across a video on Google about Atlantis that I found fascinating and watched. I don't know, quite literally, like, you know, a dozen or so times. And I wanted to ask him, like, who was behind the making of this video. If he even knows what I'm talking about. It says it's from the prophecies of Elah, E-L-I-A.
Elah?
Pronouncing that correctly or not, I don't know. But,
I don't think...
We know that there are literally tens of thousands of websites worldwide that speak of Atlantis. In fact, my colleague, Professor Robert Schoch of Boston University, speaks of this as perhaps an indication of people searching for deeper solutions and in terms of the origin of the human experiment that we see so many...
That would indicate me.
But the only reason I think to bring up Atlantis in this discussion is to see that Atlantis didn't make it through the shift, and it was a civilization that went down, and we're at the same critical point in our evolution.
We often say we're going from Atlantis 1 to Atlantis 2, and so we have the same possibilities. If people believe in reincarnation or even just cycles of the planet, are we going to make the same mistakes that the other Atlantis does, or do we actually be able to graduate finally into what we consider is the house of many mansions, where, as Dr. Hertak mentioned...
Professor, what I'm asking you is who funded that video?
It doesn't matter who funded it. What do you have to say about it? That's interesting.
We don't know that video. No one in this room knows it.
I know it. It's pretty amazing.
Well, maybe we'll play that at another show, but do you have anything to add to the discussion about...
Because, JJ, you're in the video.
Oh, he's in the video.
Yeah, he's in the video.
Oh, well, he's not familiar with which video he's in.
Some years ago, I did speak at various forums in Europe.
I'm just trying to figure out if, like, it's a hodgepodge of people that they put into the video to make it, like,
highlight,
like, cultivate their own, like, concept of whatever it was that they were talking about, or if it was something that you participated in willingly and knowingly, saying, I agree with this message that these folks have.
As I recall, there was a lot of things that were done, to use your terminology, a hodgepodge series of television programs in Europe, and this seems to be one of those situations where several comments that I made at speakers' forums or symposia were taken and re-edited.
I got no problem with like what you say. Like, you know, I think this is all interesting, and I have no you know, set down position on any of it.
Well,
I'm not trying to.
Okay, Aaron, why don't you just keep Aaron,
I'm just saying.
Aaron, just keep tuning in because we're going to just.
Because when I watched this video, it stirred something inside of me more than once.
Well, tell us what it stirred. What happened for you when you saw this video on Atlantis?
Well, I mean, it was a kind of a creation story that didn't really seem like it had as much of the spooky ghost defecation as see how good I am with this as some other stories have.
All right, Aaron, why don't you just hold on a second because I want to get to Jody Sorota here, she's a visionary. She has some information about this coming year that she wants to share. She'll be doing a class on this Thursday in New York. So, Jody, please share what's coming to you these days, please.
It was similar to what Desiree had mentioned about how we're at a point similar to Atlantis where we have gotten to this point before we've gotten to this point before in other times where we got basically to the same point where we were in this task to move our consciousness to much higher levels, and we remember this. We have this in our Akashic records, the records of our soul's existences, where people are still kind of feeling that intensity to complete the task, to bring the levels of what we're going through and bringing ourselves to much higher levels on a personal level, our personal purpose, to then come into the greater purpose, to be of service to the greater whole. And in that, while we're doing this, we're becoming really exhausted and tired. And we've done this before. What are the yugas? I don't know how many years. Is that over 2,000 years every time?
Or more. The yugas are longer than
200,000 practically.
200,000.
Yeah.
So there are these various yugas where we've done this before every 200,000 something years. And this is another one of those times because we haven't made it. And Atlantis was one of those times where we got to a certain point and we used the power that we knew in ways that basically destroyed us. So we're at a point now where we need to be in that sense of balance, that place where we have to get balanced within ourselves and move through the illusions to get to the truth. And what's happening are the energies that are coming into the planet to assist us are bringing more light into the planet to ignite our own light so that we can see what we basically kept in the dark to ourselves. So we're at a point where now we need to maintain staying on the path while at the same time we have this energetic charge from things that have happened that we haven't made it. So we're sort of in this hopelessness at the same time purpose to continue for the goodness of the whole.
Right, but when the forces of light get more powerful, don't the opposite forces also get more powerful?
Yeah, whenever you come into things that are more about light or love, like love is unconditional, so you don't even, saying that is redundant. If you have conditions, usually when you're in a state of disease, you say, I have this condition. So it's like, what's the condition you've placed on yourself or has been placed upon you that you're having to work through to come back to the truth? So we're in this place of moving through illusion to truth, conditions to unconditional places, basically coming back to love or our sense of our God connection, our God self.
But I agree with you, Alan. I think that there is this duality that exists in the universe, and that at least the local universe, as we say, because the higher worlds is that unconditional love, that perfect oneness, that great space. But here, the more light you put in or the more balance, you are kind of thrown off balance, or there's attempts to throw you off balance. The one thing you have to do, and I agree wholeheartedly with what you said, Jody, is that you have to find that oneness. When you can get beyond the duality, that you get into that oneness, then you can actually be that kind of heaven on earth, and that I think is what we're having to try to find right now. Which is,
and we've been moving from a third dimensional sort of emotional level to the fourth dimension, which is more of the polarities of patterns, to the fifth dimension, which is more of where your heart begins to open, and the sixth is where you maintain that, and it just continues from there. So I think we're sort of moving from fourth to fifth at this point.
Well, we
That's
are.
my sense. I don't know if you agree with me.
I totally agree, and I think Phil, who's been using his own personal life as a sounding board for that transformation, has been speaking all over the world about this type of change. Tell us, Phil.
Well, as it said in the keys, the emissaries of light are coming in vast numbers now to advance the foundations of life, to help refashion new worlds, to help refashion ourselves. Basically, this is the time when the beauty that has slept within us is beginning to reawaken in Pilgrim's Progress. The Christian falls asleep before the gates of paradise, just as Dorothy and her company fell asleep before the gates of the Emerald City in the poppy fields, because there's always that sleep before the Christian falls asleep before the gates of paradise. This is the time when the beauty that has slept within us will now awaken. This is the awakening of the sleeping beauty now.
And this is the importance of why you have international symposia and conferences like took place on the 22nd.
Why we're doing what we're doing right now.
Exactly.
January,
Thank you.
all of the leading scholars involved with astronomy, extraterrestrial research, were able to come out and say publicly, there's a real science here of the mind. There's a real direction here that we must look to in terms of our futuristic experience of greater life in the universe.
So we're breaking ground with this kind of conversation, and the technologies involved in it, I think, are also putting out those waves that will change the consciousness. So it's very exciting. I think Jody had a little more that's coming through to her, because Jody is a great visionary. So, I mean, just go with it.
I was going to say, you had been talking about this before. When there is light, there's also darkness. And
Right.
it's like two sides of the same coin. You can't have one side without the other. So we have to hold that. You have to experience both in order to experience wholeness. So if you don't experience both, most people tend to only want to experience the light. And it's like if you focus on love, you'll everything else that is not of that, all the conditions will come up. If you focus on joy, everything that you're not at joy about will come up.
Yeah, so how do we wake up? Yeah.
You experience the polarities not in a state of static equilibrium, but in a state of dynamic equilibrium. When yin and yang are perfectly balanced, and then there is no movement. There always is the eternal dance of trying to rebalance one with the other, whether you have the greatest light, you have the greatest darkness. What I think you were talking about, Aaron, you feel the stirring now, because in our genetic code, in the genetic code of everyone on this planet, is hidden in the memory of not only the lost, forgotten, forbidden history of our race and the deeper meaning and purposes of our lives, but the keys to the evolution of our race. In the realms of illuminated truth, our victory is assured, but we have to align ourselves, our thoughts, our deeds, our words and actions with that truth. And we feel these stirrings because we have these simultaneous variations of ourselves, past, future, parallel lives, all coexisting in the same relative time space, the same scenario space, image space, as you would say. And so we're beginning to get the memory of all the times we came so close, but didn't quite make it relativistically. And so we feel the sadness, that sense of loss, that sense of separation, that longing to return to that state of innocence that we used to know.
What was that, Aaron?
That's just amazing speech. I mean, I hear someone say something like that, and it's like I feel like it resonates so deeply with something that I can't understand right now.
But it also resonates. It resonates to everyone at this point, and we're all doing this collectively as one greater grid. So individually, if everyone shifted one thing within themselves, the entire grid would lift to a higher level.
Right.
So as one person is experiencing this, we're all experiencing this.
And it's okay if you don't understand it with your logical mind, because you're resonating with it on a deeper level of consciousness, and so you're getting it. And it's always the mind is the last to know, really.
But I think watch for it, because you'll start seeing it. What's happening, I think, is almost like we feel ourselves in a matrix, that certain things are starting to line up. You start seeing, well, like today we ran into someone on the street that made a whole change in our lives, and it's a very special thing. So there's certain like rhythms going on right now. I think you were saying there's a certain higher alignment.
It feels so good to me that I don't understand why everybody isn't like running to this.
Because people are in fear and they're afraid of the unknown. And
It just vibrates, and like it feels so effing good. I don't understand why everybody isn't into this.
Because people want to stay asleep. It's much easier to accept the fact that no, there aren't UFOs out there. There's old guys walking around the crop circles, making the crop circles. It's so easy to accept the status quo than to go out and create an unknown reality. To create something new. It's harder because it means you have to change. You have to shift who you are. And that's why for you, you're already in the change. And thank you for that, because you're adding to it. So many people are not at that level of vibration, but we're moving there.
And Aaron, be aware that there's going to be great breakthroughs in the search for forgotten civilizations that my colleague Phil just spoke about in the deserts of the Middle East, in areas of the Far East, in the Taclomacan Basin, even in the area of Yucatan in Guatemala. There's going to be the discovery, I believe, of major city complexes through remote sensing science that will show once and for all that this is one sub-cycle of a much larger cycle of evolution that we are part of. And this will bring together the metaphors of the past and make the poetic side of Atlantis or Altea more meaningful. That we are, as it were...
What's the general consensus on Sitchin in that room?
On Sitchin, Zacharias Sitchin, the 12th planet, I think he has very valid points that there was an advanced civilization that helped seed the primate population here on Earth in order to become more godlike. So I think he has a valid contribution. I think other people have taken his theories further. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I was going to say, one of those things is, of course, that at a certain time there would be more contact with certain other levels of intelligence, and we feel this is going on right now, whether it's extraterrestrial or what we call also ultra-terrestrial intelligence, which are higher forms of light that are also making themselves known. Sometimes they look like whole light beings. This is something the Keys of Enoch talk about, where really manifestations of angelic forces appear right in the room. And so if we're making this connection, if we're really going into the fifth dimension, we have to realize that we have to be prepared for what's in the fifth dimension. And it's much more of a greater harmonious situation, but it's also many other levels of intelligence.
And of reality and of the unknown. It means consciousness has to expand to include more possibilities, and that's what's difficult, and that's what my program, New Realities, and all the people here on this dais all are trying to communicate, that there are greater realities.
And through all of that we're going through, we're becoming multidimensional. Well, we are multidimensional. We're just becoming aware of ourselves as being multidimensional. So in that respect, there's also more responsibility. When you were talking before, why people are not into whatever you feel this is, it's because there's more responsibility, the ability to respond to the choices you're making. So when you're making choices from a higher conscious perspective, you're more aware, and you have to become more responsible, and you can't not know what you already know.
Right. Zachary Fader, I'll be talking to here, who, you know, you're kind of coming into the scene, and you've had major shifts in your consciousness. Well,
compared to all the people on the dais here this evening, I mean, I'm relatively a novice next to experts, but all I can really do is definitely just agree and echo, especially what I was saying, the idea that, you know, civilization right now is definitely spearheading two different directions, two opposite directions at once. You know, things have been, in one way, almost seem as if they've never been worse, and yet we know full well that they've never been better as well.
Right.
And we're just, those things are moving exactly the same speed.
What's your personal experience of this shift here?
Well, my personal experience is that once you've made the shift, or at least maybe once, I should rather say, once the shift has made you.
Right.
Because really I find in my own experience, it was, I mean, every door to escaping the shift had to be closed.
Right, because you said your mother was into all this new age stuff, and you were totally turned off.
Couldn't handle it until I was ready.
Uh-huh.
And then one day just started reading books.
What happened? What shifted in you for that?
Obviously, I have lots to do with mind. You know, being
yeah. So what was it that made that shift for you?
A slave of one's mind, and thinking that that really was who I was, and that's what, you know, and just being tortured by it every morning, every evening in a downward spiral, constantly thinking that this sort of never-ending sort of FM radio had something to say. And in fact, it really is the smallest, least significant voice of those which speak in our body. And now, of course, I only use it to sort of separate the whites and the colours at the laundromat, and so just sort of balancing the checkbook. But aside from that, it's really the last thing I use to make major decisions. But it definitely had to come to a point where it was me and the mind. I mean, it was it had to come up at loggerheads to a moment where. Decision had to be made, and I think it just made itself. I mean, there was a breakage somewhere.
That's beautiful, because that's, in a sense, the rational mind. We say almost the male side to reality. The female is usually the emotions, and so you had a conflict with that and become probably more balanced, which is that oneness that we're talking about that's so important. And in addition to that, I think that we realize that all of humanity is being given the same choice to really see and go beyond their rational mind and start listening. We say we're all biotransducers. We're really picking up on things all the time, and whether it's the television that you listen to all the time or some lower level of intelligence, which we believe are also out there, you actually have to filter the higher thoughts, and that's the most positive thing. Is, are your thoughts positive? How are you transforming like the planet with positive, higher understanding and knowledge? Or are you actually taking the negativity and drawing it into yourself? So this is our choice that we have to make on a momentary basis.
If I may just say that I think the major problem with a lot of people these days is that they don't know that there is an alternative.
Right.
They get into this spiral and they think somehow they have to work out a logical conclusion outwards, and most of the time we know very well that if you try to find a logical conclusion, you're not going to get there to revelation. And
but you didn't know. You didn't know there was an alternative either.
No, there was a chink in the armor.
Okay.
Because of my parents had been into
what
I used to call kooky things, which now I'm calling normal things.
I see. Hey, Aaron, how did you wake up to all this stuff? Aaron?
It's such a process. I don't even know where really to begin. And I know this is like something that's a little bit crazy to whack somebody in the head with from the door, but I'm an ex-con. Pretty much everything that I've learned and read, I read while I was in prison. So that's pretty much how I woke up to all this, as you put it.
Well, if I can say we're all in prison, I know that our friend was just sitting there in southern France, and he was kind of in this place with nothing else. You were telling me over dinner.
It was the same prison.
Yeah.
I mean, the greatest prison is being the prison of your mind. I mean, that's it. I mean, there's nothing worse. I mean, don't get me wrong. I did spend 24 hours in a New York prison once, so I know that the reality of those awful bars really doesn't compare. But I can tell you, even if you're in the nicest place, if you're stuck in your head, you don't get much sleep either.
I just it's an experience in and of itself, and I never take anything away from it. Like people have said to me, they're like when they would write me when I was in jail, they would say things like, "Oh, I shouldn't really complain because you're in jail and I'm not." And I would always think in my head
hello?
That doesn't make a it doesn't make a difference that I'm sitting here suffering inside of the actual physical 24-hour a day structure of prison. You people out there are suffering through the same thing yourselves, and no one would ever really understand what I meant by that, and I never really felt like I ever got through to anybody.
Well, two of the great minds of Western civilization, from the Apostle Paul to Martin Luther King, have been imprisoned. And so to speak, it's sometimes in the quieter places that society imposes upon those who push the envelope too much or are part of the countercultures that allow them to go within and make the breakthroughs of inner space that has to be understood, because the realities we're speaking of are a synthesis of many realities coming together, from the breakthroughs in space science to the breakthroughs in archaeology, geology, remote sensing, archaeology, medicine, music. The whole panorama, the whole spectrum of physical reality is about to change, I believe, as we are made aware that we have cosmic counterparts that will this human society to go into the next phase of the quantum mind, the universal experience.
But I just want to say that
I could not agree more. I mean, like,
but I was going to say, in jail you could.
Information that like, I think is it's amazing. It's amazing to me. I'm almost speechless.
But see, that's what's so great. You could have gone into like a real downward spiral. You could have been like, back in jail. You could have been thinking negative thoughts. You could be carrying a gun. You could do all these horrible things. And then you changed. You had that decision, and you chose the upward spiral. And this is, I think, what we're really talking about.
And leading physicist from South Africa, Neil Turok, who's now at Cambridge, has come out with a new remodeling of the cosmos in terms of Einstein's concept of a cosmological constant, which he says will work if there are multiple Big Bangs or a whole series of processes through which the world goes through many experiences of reviving, renewing, expanding, and contracting. It's not one singular Big Bang. It's certainly not one event happening. And so what you're saying to your question is certainly on target for many great minds to explore. And we've been privileged, Dr. Desiree Hertak and myself, to talk with Roger Penrose, one of the top mathematicians who's working with new modelings of the cosmos as they relate really to the powers of the mind, the powers of human consciousness, to see the unity between the outer universe and the inner universe.
Well, let's bring it back to this moment, okay? Because you said, Dr. Hertak, that you see some things might be coming down this year that will be challenging for a lot of people. How can we help keep the energy up and vital and alive and joyful? If there's things coming, we have a big election coming up. That's probably the biggest election in the country's history.
I think we have to look at the whole spectrum being changed, and that we as a human creation are not simply working out of the mind of political vocabulary. We're not looking for new hero figures that are going to save the world from obviously what has gone on for many, many generations of the misuse of the resources of Mother Nature. So we have to really rejuvenate ourselves continually, and I have found through my work, which has inspired Carlos Santana, Alice Coltrane, and others, that music is the key. Music connected with creative consciousness, coming together on a daily experience of affirmations, of inner meditations, of positive thinking, of working out solutions collectively with others, relieves oneself from the inner drama, the inner jail of thinking that everything is centered around self. The egocentricity of Western civilization is now changing. We are realizing the planetary system itself has to acquire a new type of leadership that is pluralistic, ecumenical, and, shall we say, visionary in scope, recognizing that we are, as a planetary humanity, waking up to the cosmic citizenship that's at our doorstep.
But what you thinking we might have some financial difficulties? It already seems like they say. I don't like to dwell on those things, but what's the reality?
Well, I think we're going to see all sorts of political pundits and economists, micro and macro economists, looking at solutions purely economically, and I think this is the wrong signal. We have to realize the greatest change that is coming is not economic nor geopolitical. It's the change of consciousness within ourselves. As Jody said so well, we can collectively use our energies positively for renewal and seek leadership, not so much from the political but from the social scientific, from journalists who have insights.
And you can't explain a consciousness shift to anybody. Like that's either something.
But people are going to have to experience it, because right now, and this is part of the problem I think that the world economy is going through, everyone is in this fear, But actually, if they would just really go with the flow, we would not actually have the recession. Most economists say part of the problem is the fear-basedness that people live in all the time. And they're concerned about their extra dollar, they're concerned about this, that. They don't think on a global planetary level. They're not trying to help the planet, they're trying to figure out what they can get out of the planet. And then when you shift that way of thinking into helping the planetary system, then you actually start working towards really saving and helping all of humanity.
So the incubation of the new spirit, the new vitality, must come through deeper and more profound working relationships with one another. It must come through networking with positive thinkers and futurists. It must come from the exploration of how the inner dynamic can write poetry, can get on talk shows like we're doing now in terms of using the World Wide Web as a university of experience. It has to come also through recognizing the purity and the depth of how higher cosmic experiences are going to be becoming more and more of the norm, as we see in Texas here in January 2008.
Is there some rotten scheme in terms of what's going to happen on the Earth?
A rotten scheme? I think it's an uplifting. I mean, what Dr. Hertog just referred to are these great sightings of UFOs that no one can deny. They really are present. The presence is making themselves known that is greater than the limitations that we have known thus far in our history. And that's a great awakening for all of us. So there's only an excitement I feel about the future. And
if you pull reality only in one small micro direction as to a given classical theology or a given political agenda, then you begin to see, as it were, schemes and quote-unquote string pullers of this agenda or that agenda.
I have to ask you, who made that movie, that Atlantis movie?
We'll take a look at it and we'll let you know privately.
Well, we'll get that to you. We'll email it to you. But I think we're really onto a really key point, because I think what's happening here is like a gelling of a way of moving forward.
I think that I might spontaneously combust. That's how much of an issue it is to me, because I have to know who made that. Because if I can't figure out who made that movie, then I don't think that I can make another step.
Yeah, but there's a greater things than that. I mean, that's the duality of the mind. The mind wants to know the information, the details, and the other part of us wants to know the way forward. So you're getting caught up in the little thing and you're missing the big picture.
And it's a perfect way to see how we get distracted by all these things instead of staying on course. This is a perfect way where you said I can't go.
Are you serious? I mean, I want to have a very civil discussion about this. Are you really serious? Do you think that it's wrong for me to ask?
No, it's not wrong, but I think something bigger than details are happening right now.
Hang on just a second. Aaron.
This is Paula Gloria herself.
I've got a picture of you up, so I'm not getting in the shot, Aaron. I've got a picture of you up right now on the Switch version. Try to drop into why you want to know, and just so they can connect with you, that's all. Because I was very touched, because I've watched your comments a lot, and so when you showed me this, I paid very careful attention, and I had to admit that it was a collection of what I had heard over the years put together very succinctly, and I was delighted, as you were, that I saw my good dear friend J.J. Hertog at the end. But what you need to do is just relay to them, because this is their milieu. Tell them what's most alive in you about that, and then they can, you know what I mean, connect.
You know, so it's beyond what you saw. Yeah, come back to us. Come back home, Aaron.
Tell them.
No, tell us what's the most alive in you about wanting to know.
I don't have any problem with that. Like you put it like that. That doesn't go. Oh, that sounds so weird to me. That doesn't sound weird to me. Come back home. But I understand that. But I'm looking for an answer.
And what will that answer do? What will that answer do for you?
I can't. When do I stop asking who made this and who made that?
Well, we'll find out. We don't know right now. We'll find out.
Again, on a bigger scale, that's the same thing as us trying to understand what is God, or what is everything in relation to everything. We have to trust.
But what is the biggest? What is the biggest? What is the biggest question of all?
What is the biggest question of all?
Who are we? I think that's a good one.
And where are we going?
Yeah. And why are we here?
Why are we here?
Yeah.
And where did we come from?
Exactly. So, if you could,
We're willing to answer those questions. Oh, that's not a problem.
that's the question that will answer all the other questions.
We
I
all think we're coming from a higher dimension. We're actually just manifest down here temporarily. We're actually higher souls living in a body temporarily. That's why it's not so concerning.
That sounds cute.
It's not even cute. It's real.
So I just want to say, for people who are listening on BBS Radio, you can also watch us on RabbitHoleCenrl.tv. This is Alan Steinfeld, and this is a very special edition of New Realities, and I'm here just to reintroduce Sharon Newmark and Jade Natanya and Zachariah Fader. And Aaron, what's your last name, Aaron? Well, you don't have to tell us if you don't want to. And Jerry Soretta, Dr. Hertog, J.J. Hertog, Dr. Desiree Hertog, Phil Gruber, and myself. Dr. Hertog had a comment.
I'm just saying, in terms of those in the audience that are interested in new film work, I have produced an award-winning film many years ago called The Merkaba, which I feel is one step beyond what you're describing in the archetypal film on Atlantis, which many European young film directors are into. And having taught at a film school, I have many people throughout the world who are working with bits and pieces of the puzzle. But in this film called The Merkaba, Voyage of a Starseed, we look at all of the contributions of world cultures. So go to our website, keysofenoch.org, call up at the shopping carts, look for the film Merkaba. We have it out in 7 different languages, and you will be taken through an electrifying experience of what I call swimming in hyperspace, of recognizing
I agree. Right. By the way, I think Professor Hertog is an amazing man who has so much information that will knock people sideways if they have any intelligence.
I will personally take your questions to heart. I will find out who was behind this film. I will let my dear friend Paula Gloria know about this, and she'll get back to you.
I want to ask Phil Gruber, who said before about this great sleep before the awakening. How do we wake from the sleep, Phil?
Well, it's really interesting when you talked about your experience in prison. It's been said that we're born in the prison and born into bondage of our 3-dimensional electromagnetic bodies. It's very interesting. I find that when you escape from prison, they call it being on the lam. Lam means path, doesn't it? So when you escape from the prison, you're actually on the path. In one of the most beautiful of the Gnostic Gospels, the Apocrypha, the Hymn of the Pearl, they talk about that there's this lost body of light, a lost body of the garment of light, that there's an image of ourselves preserved in the higher heavens, that weren't we not created to transpose angelic functions into the flesh, to be able, we're standing on the brink, we're at a critical juncture here in our tenure as embodied souls. We're being given an invitation once again to take our place among angelics as allies, and even more importantly as equals. But it's said in the Hymn of the Pearl that image is preserved for us in the higher heavens. It's the merging or the union of the image and the angel, when we can exalt and elevate our thoughts to having no thought that isn't divorced from a sense that there is a higher intelligence, that there are higher aspects of ourselves that we can transpose into the here and now. Then our experience in this life and the experience of God that we are in this world will be the holographic projection of those thoughts. The way to awaken the Sleeping Beauty, in the nursery rhyme, the only thing that awaked her was a kiss. And our word kiss comes from the Gaelic word kaith, which I think are pronounced kith, which is why I'm sure that angels have lisps, but that's another conversation. But that word kith or kaith means to appear without disguise. So see, Aaron, when we can go into ourselves deeply, like Dorothy in her adventures in Oz, she finally had to go south to find Glinda, the Good Witch of the South. She had to go deep within ourselves. When we can see ourselves without disguises, when can we remove all the masks and really look at ourselves honestly and deeply, and come into that place within ourselves that knows that we're not spiritual beings having a human experience. We're having a spiritual experience. You can't help but have a spiritual experience because we are composed of spirit. We are spirit first. And when we get into those aspects of ourselves, we know, just like it's said in the net of Indra, that we're truly all connected. It's the great metaphor for the interconnectedness of all things. And again, once we can elevate our thoughts, our lives, and the experience of the divine that we are in this life will be the projection of those more exalted thoughts. Then we can finally know peace.
Okay, so
in our lifetimes, we will know the full revelation of the Christos and all the great sacred teachings in our lifetimes.
But so we're heading back to the divine. Everyone can agree about that. But where are we going specifically? Is the future known, or is the future a great unknown? I mean,
well, we do feel there's a divine plan, and this change that we're even going through right now, even though it's part of the big bang and the big crush, these are all words that scientists have talked about, the cyclic cycle of the universe, whether it's gamma rays or cosmic rays hitting the planet or solar flares that's causing changes or just humanity at a crossroads. Basically, we are always given these crisis points to make the next quantum leap.
Right.
And
it's
so
a test. It's like a final exam.
Right.
We have to make the leap. It's not looking at the blackboard of Roger Penrose,
right,
or looking at the blackboard of Stephen Hawking and say because they've got that mathematical formula on the blackboard, the big change takes place. No, it has to come within ourselves. And this is the great realization that is happening on Mother Earth, wherever we travel, whether it's the jungles of Brazil or the universities in South Africa or the peoples in Eastern Europe, in Russia and Poland, in Hungary. There is this great quest amongst young people now who are not satisfied with traditional Orthodox science or religion. They know that there's something that is missing, which is the spark of the divine that they are feeling within themselves. Why? Because the puzzles of external reality do not make sense, the way they're portioned out in normal processes.
That's what I've felt so many times, like the spark of the divine. Whether I could relate, say this is what this is or not, I knew that I was feeling something that was sparking, like within inside of me. Whatever, I may as well just go ahead and put it out there.
Yeah.
The reason I got locked up was for LSD. I, even in my, teenager days had a penchant for, these hallucinogenic sort of, whatnot.
And then, so what was your process then?
I think that says something about,
Well, you were searching for God, in a sense, through this altered states of consciousness, and you didn't really, maybe you found out you don't need chemicals to really achieve that.
I don't need, and I don't. I don't at all. It was a process. I really feel like, because I haven't touched anything like that since, since I was a teenager.
And aren't you feeling much higher now with this conversation?
What's that?
Aren't you feeling much higher with the type of information and conversation that this is bringing you?
I feel like that my interpretation of spirituality has caused me a much more elevated experience in terms of the questions that have always been vexing me.
Did you ever?
That's an eloquent way of putting it, which I think it is.
Wait, Jody has a question.
Did you find that from being in prison that it forced you to go more inward just because you were enclosed in a space where you weren't around very many people? Because from doing the
my prison experience was very violent and bad, because when I was there, I had problems with the people that worked there.
Oh, really?
So I had a very bad experience.
Well, we're just glad you took this to a higher level, and I have to say that we encourage people, of course, not to use drugs, but to use the higher meditation. And that's what I was trying to say about this Matrix, like the movie Matrix. When you start doing that, you start seeing your interconnected higher self with your human self becoming one, and you start seeing how things fall into place. And I think that's the interesting thing about working in a spiritual way, is you start seeing how it's no longer happenstance that's taking place. Like you wouldn't walk down the street necessarily get hit by a car, but you're actually told and prepared, don't cross the street there because there could be something bad. Or you're told to go down the street because you're going to see someone that you really wanted to see that you were just thinking about. So it's that kind of matrix scenario that I think when you start tapping into the higher levels of reality, what we call the Godhead, that you start coordinating with.
I'm feeling that, like,
Good.
like from you. You know, like which is why I didn't interrupt you like an idiot.
No,
You got it.
And also,
Jody has something to
I mean,
say.
and I'm feeling that. So
Great.
it also, everything becomes...
I think that it's working.
Wait, Aaron, Jody has something to say
It
here.
also becomes a synchronicity about everything. When you start to align yourself with your higher understanding, you go into that flow that you were talking about earlier, that you're in that flow and there is nothing else. It's like learning the steps to a dance and then all of a sudden you're just dancing. You don't think about it. You don't have to do anything about it other than just be in the experience.
But the future is an unknown, and there may be a divine plan, but each moment is being created afresh and anew as we evolve.
I feel like we're given an outline or a structure, because there's structure in everything in the universe, in molecules and atoms. Everything is in a structure. So there has to be some form of a structure that we're part of in that grid. But there's like an outline or a structure that we fall into, and within that structure we have the freedom to create and make decisions.
Well, speaking of that structure, Jody, do you want to lead us in a little bit of your toning? Jody does these sound vibrations that help open people up to higher dimensions of thought and frequency. And if you just let the sound in, it can shift stuff inside that will make you think new thoughts and expand in new ways. And then we can each do a blessing around the room. So do you want to, Jody?
Yeah.
I know you're always up for it. Okay.
Part of it are the light languages. It's the languages that Dr. Hertak was talking about before. So I'll do some of that just to activate your consciousness.
Okay. Pay attention.
So pay attention. Close your eyes.
Okay.
Close your eyes and just take a deep breath and just give yourself permission to allow yourself to receive. And hold an intention of anything that you would like to shift in your life or consciousness. Now I'm going to focus on sacredness, to remember the sacredness of who we are. Hainamare kurimmarari shuririmma vara Gorish kalalele korimbare telele kalambare chishutare koramarehi Oyana Hare Madei Urishi Kalele Kuna Vanadei Ambare Shinsha Daranim Alale Kurimarehim Elele Kurum Shalekindandeim Ariana takatani shikotolele kalakti matare katene matere shakalele kale materi shikiriata Ania sadeni kotorini shikotani shokotani shimkyo. As we speak to your soul and your heart. Darish kalale katorini matere kalele ketinia. The angels and the archangels are here to infuse you with love, and they speak to you in their language. Lalila talekataleni torina lele katare vera kotoshin shele kalakatante. Leline ni tu toniata le kya tarini shishin kotarinia tanini tiata contenia tele. Onya sarakotoninia saravareketinia shokwantiata tereke. Take a few deep breaths. Let us together just chant Om sometimes. Om.
we take the breath from the Sanskrit language into the ancient Coptic and Hebrew, as we visualize the centering process of the Divine Mother as the inner part of the divine within us, as we visualize the Mother of the Christ, Maria, as we recognize the energy of the great Archangel Gabriel breathing and singing through us her name, Maria Sophia, which means divine wisdom, connected with the Shekinah, which is the Hebrew word for the divine presence, as we visualize the importance of using sacred language to balance, to harmonize, and to think positively always on the highest of levels. We invoke 12 times this sacred mantra, this sacred prayer in the language of light. And I will pronounce it one time, then we'll do it together 12 times. Maria Sophia Shekinah.
Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah. Maria Sophia Shekinah.
We take a deep breath. We send light and divine love of the Sacred Heart to all parts of the world, to all those souls in bondage and prison. We ask for cosmic release and grace to come forth.
And as we raise ourselves up